to get started.
Yeah.
Cool. So welcome everyone to the Museum of the Home. Thank you all for coming to the launch of How We Build Home tonight, and it's a real pleasure to host this event and to host the work at the museum, so the exhibitions that you'll see later on this evening. And it was also a real pleasure to have worked with Azizat and to work with Wazi over the years. And we're really honoured to be part of Azizat's legacy. I'm really thankful to be able to continue her work and to continue to work with Wazi and really share it with our communities and all of our visitors. It's a really important part of our programme for the next kind of year and kind of ongoing. It will be kind of a permanent part of what we do as a museum. So at the museum, we want to do more projects like this that are so powerful and important and which acknowledge the complex nature of home, especially in light of the history of the museum's buildings and of the statue of Robert Jeffrey, which we hope to move, and we hope this project helps us to achieve, and how this project directly addresses that and helps us with those kind of conversations and with all of that work. So this initial stage of the project is part of our Festival of Sleep, which is the annual Festival of Home that we run at the museum. And this year, it looks at all things sleep related. So Wazi and Azizat's work is really important. So with the festival, we don't only address the fact that like how many hours we sleep, linking to health, but also how we kind of can dream as a society and hopefully build better societies together and address the inequalities of society and kind of make change and real impact together. So it also does look at kind of many other things, like the kind of changes to sleep throughout time and sleep culturally. So do look at our programme of events, which will run alongside this until October, because there are loads of themes this work addresses that will kind of continue to share in other ways. If exhibitions aren't your thing, there are lots of other events that you can join too. So I will, as I say, look at our website and also do come back if you're online. Do come back and view the exhibition. All of the information will be on our website. So I'll now hand over to Wazi and kind of get the event started. But thank you all for coming.
Thanks. Okay, hi. Just going to get my notes up. Hello everyone at home. Hello everyone here. My name is Oluwatosin Daniju, and I am half of the How We Build Home project. I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. Please let me know if I'm going too fast. You can put it in the chat as well. Let me know if you'd like a 2-minute break or to ask a question or something like that to break it up a little bit. And I'll say a lot of what I'll be doing lots of readings from the project and from the Gem Collective site. So after the event, I'll make sure that I send through the links to things. So if you feel like walking away from the video, if you feel like zoning out a bit, please do. Be easy, be comfortable, and hopefully you will enjoy what you hear. And after I've spoken a bit about the project and about GEM and the different readings, there'll be a chance to go and actually see the installations that are in place. Okay, so I'm going to start by paying a really brief tribute to Azizat. I think it's really important to begin by remembering the person who is the reason that the project exists and the reason that we're all here. And I'm going to start by quoting some of her own words, which I'll probably be doing quite a lot this evening. Remembering the words of Nathaniel de Telemaque, whether you're looking up at the nighttime or daytime sky, the constellations are always there. Whether we're visible to one another or not, we're all always present. And that's from a piece that she wrote called Extending Starry Nights. So for me, and I think for all of us at GEM, Azizat's absence is marked by her continued presence. She remains with us in so many ways. We were blessed to know her, and we remain so blessed to love her. We're going to make a dedicated time for a memorial to Azizat, and that's why this bit is really brief. For now, tonight, we celebrate How We Build Home as a demonstration of Azizat's capacity for dreaming and bringing different imaginations to life, for her centering of the lives of Black women and genderqueer folk, and for the brilliance she brought to everything that she did. So I'll start with an introduction to Gem, and it's on our website, and it's something that was written collaboratively by Azizat, Saima, Manzoor Khan, Amber Swabi Yarasati, and myself. Just wanted to make sure I got everyone. Okay, so the Geographies of Embodiment Research Collective. Gems that crystallize underground are formed under intense heat and pressure. This is our commitment to one another. We refuse to stay underground anymore. We arrive here tired of being sacrificed for dominant imaginations of law, order, or liberation. Colonization created conditions that make lives unlivable. Our bodies have been rendered disposable in worlds centered around profit. This brutalizes and erases us from the bodies that we live in, while enabling others to brutalize and erase us via the policies, policing, and imperialism that it justifies. When we spoke about our pains, we were asked to straitjacket our experiences into consumable, publishable proof. We were told our realities were divisive, our knowledges irrational, our worldviews incomplete. And slowly it became easier to be dishonest about the bodies we write from. Even when we worked within community spaces that claimed to fight for a collective liberation, we were compelled to wait for justice and erase our bodies, ourselves. No, we're building a different reality. We refuse to isolate our embodied experiences from our engagement and production of critical scholarship. We refuse to cover up the brutal systems that stick and swirl around our bodies. We're not asking for integration into systems that were never designed to house our realities. Gem is about honouring life by honouring our embodied homes. We dwell in bodies that are policed and surveyed. We are sick, we are caring, we are dying, we are grieving. We have repressed traumas submerged within our bodies. We are nourishing others. We have data collected about our bodies. We are seen and unseen, gendered and ungendered, and brutalised. We are reduced to hashtags and folded into statistics. And today we are, due to power, hyper-vulnerable to both violence and virus. We're a research community formed with one intention, making our lives more livable. We write, dream, and dwell within the messiness of our lives. We respect boundaries and work through careful conversations. We reject any world where our lives are treated as a minoritized problem or statistic. As we reimagine the worlds we live in, we center systems of care that honor our different embodied beings and traumas. Gem is about creating space for us to breathe, and more importantly, space for us to shine. It's a bit of an introduction to what Gem is and what we're trying to do. I think what's so important about Gem is not so much, or not as just what we're doing, but also how we're doing it. Trying to move differently, to pace ourselves, to work and collaborate in careful ways, creating spaces that are different to anything that I've been part of before. So to set the context for this collaboration with Museum of the Home, Danielle touched on it really briefly in her introduction. In November of 2020, Aziza wrote this letter to the museum relating to the statue outside of Robert Jeffrey, who is described as an English merchant who profited from the forced labour and trading of his enslaved Africans, and for whom the museum used to be named. Working with the Museum of the Home, Jeffrey must fall. On 23rd November, I sent this letter to the Museum of Home's Board of Trustees. I'm currently awaiting their response. So this was posted on Aziza's blog in November that year. Over the summer, there was a public outcry against the Museum of the Home that I need to address, given our planned collaboration. I say this because I believe in a politics of accountability to my wider community. This is the connection that fuels my Black feminist praxis. This grounds my hope in the possibilities of Black women's homemaking in our current political climate. There was a public consultation regarding removing the statue of Robert Jeffrey from the front of the museum. Over 3,000 people attended this meeting, most of whom were in favour of the removal of Jeffrey's statue. Yet a decision was made by 12 people during a Board of Trustees meeting to keep the statue, after receiving a letter from the government's Culture Secretary, Oliver Dowden. The board stated, "The board takes the view that the museum should respond to the issues raised by this debate by continuing with its vision of change at a fundamental level, by making the museum's workforce, creative partners, content and programming more representative and inclusive." End quote. It's unclear how the museum's board can work towards a vision of change while upholding a statue that valorizes a white supremacist enslaver. Yes, the violence of slavery needs to be interrogated, but that violence was only validated through this decision. The museum's board cannot work towards more inclusive or representative resources while refusing to address the statue as a glorification of the brutal inequalities that inform our world.
Unfortunately, the reading of the end of Aziza's letter was not recorded due to a loss in connection at this point. The letter continues here. I herein support the community organisers who called for the removal of the statue from the forefront of how the museum welcomes people into imagining home. Specifically, Toyin Agbetu states, "I think the museum's board is missing the point. Diversifying your workforce and making sure you have true representation across the board. They should be doing that already because it's the right thing to do. The statue of Jeffrey is on private property, but it is in the public realm and it's causing offence, which is why I argue it should come down. But from an ethical point of view, it is a symbol of slavery. There is no reinterpretation that neutralises the historical facts. We know what the statue represents. For a closed room of individuals, hidden away where we have no access to how the decision has been made, to come to agreeing that a status quo which is currently the subject of global protest is a good thing to maintain, is exactly the definition of institutionalised racism. My current project hinges on exploring the dimensions of Black feminist homemaking practices. This necessarily foregrounds the historical and ongoing exploitation and marginalisation of Black women in our current political climate. And yet the board chose to uphold a statue over other Black voices. I must ask, what concrete funds and resources are the museum's board dedicating to addressing the criticisms that Agbetu and many other organisers have raised? It's important that the labour of addressing these critiques is done by individuals working in the institutions built through the exploitation of Black people. It's also vital that resources are directed to local Black community organisers that have already been raising these critiques during the public consultation and after. As they were the ones who were disregarded, their concerns need to be addressed first and foremost. I'm ready to honour the commitments that I made in my initial Leave a Hume application. A consultation report on how race and empire could be foregrounded in the period rooms, using archival material from the museum's period rooms to work on creative collaborative pieces that foreground the British grammar of race. That being said, I'm conscious of my own role in Agbetu's critique of the closed room of individuals, hidden away where we have no access to how the decision has been made. Before continuing this collaboration, I would need assurance that 1. The museum's board have a plan that takes immediate and measurable action, including redirecting funds and resources to address the criticisms Black community organisers have raised around the removal of the statue. 2. Future updates about my collaboration with the museum need to happen on a publicly accessible platform. 3. This statement should be published on the Museum of Home's website. It's particularly important to me that these conversations continue to happen on publicly accessible platforms. This is part of acknowledging a need to move away from systems that enable a closed room of individuals to outvote the majority opinion that was expressed through the public consultation. It's vital that the museum's board illustrates their willingness to listen to Black people who point to the violent contradictions that inform the museum. Footnote. It's also worth noting that the first 4 members, including the chair, are appointed by the government's culture secretary. The rest of the board is appointed by the original 4. As @Jermaine Jackman pointed out on Twitter, There are no black members of the board. The board's makeup and decisions are reflective of the UK government's attempts to undermine and criminalise schools and teachers that want to address structural inequalities, e.g. through targeting scholars teaching about anti-capitalism, white privilege, critical race theory. This letter was published on Aziza's blog on 27th November 2020. Another reading missed from the recording was an introduction to the project, based on sections of Aziza's initial research plan for the project. Extracts of a message from Aziza sent in February 2021 to all original members of the wider Home Project. Even as this project has always been rooted in intimate histories of home for me, I'm terrified of doing this work whilst navigating a world that belittles the reality of my existence. I felt and feel my body tensing and stressing at the thought of rehashing any more of my or our pain for someone else's consumption. But I'm getting comfortable with the knowledge that my project was never about that form of knowledge production or consumption. This project is about honouring the dimensions of homemaking that I know and feel with each of you. And I want to have some time to grieve the horrors of this world while centering the moments of glory that I've experienced with all of you. I'm interested in creating the material and effective conditions for all of us to dwell in our bodies and connect to the expansiveness of the Black feminist collective imagination. More than anything, I hope this project is a labour of love for all of us. Brief overview of project. Whilst Bell Hooks' 1990 is often referenced for arguing the home can be a site of resistance for Black Americans experiencing racism, little has been done to examine how homes are constructed that affirmed our being, our blackness, our love for one another. 1990, page 46. This is particularly important to explore in the wake of the Brexit referendum, which exposed how empire is memorialised within British history, and the positioning of non-white racialised bodies as external to cultural and political imaginations of Britain. Ella Nani, 2018. Even as home studies has posited that the home is a material and an imaginative site invested with national and imperial significance. Blunt and Dowling, 2006, page 146. The proposed project moves beyond a focus on the sites of home and towards an understanding of home as a set of implicitly political relations. How is the experience of being at home located within the socio-economic processes that produce our embodied experiences? In short, how did Black women in London create space to be at home? Initial research question. How did Black women negotiate bodies, objects, and gazes to create a sense of being at home? Making home in the British Grammar of Race collaborators. Hodan Yusuf, Wasi Daniju, Museum of Home. I'm foregrounding a long-term collaboration with Wasi Daniju and Hodan Yusuf. Together, I want us to explore processes of homemaking that centre our own embodied knowledges. This is why I needed to work with Hodan and Wasi on imagining home. It's the love I experience with you two that has informed so much of my imagining of home, through this project and for myself. Our haughty time days are the embodiment of care and joy for me. How We Build Home developed from the initial plans for the Making Home in the British Grammar of Race project, and went on to be developed by Aziza Johnson and Wasi Daniju.
Okay. How we build home. Home includes so much. So much joy, tenderness, heartbreak, and sorrow. So many moments where we feel lost in ourselves, overwhelmed by the waves of grief and trauma that move beyond the specific places that we're in. So many knots formed and tended to,
with loved ones that are both near and far. Our focus is on these intertwined moments of finding ourselves. We're building space to insist on home, in this world that prefers to devalue our existence. We have all of these different spaces where we make home with each other, even when we're not physically in the same space, through Skype calls, the various social media apps, and work projects that we're still talking and thinking through. So really this project is first and foremost to and for us, Wasi Daniju and Aziza Johnson. It's about us choosing ourselves and each other, trusting that choice as the grounds for a completely different reality. And that's been heavy work. We're having to imagine hope and ease while still facing the brutalization and inequities that inform our realities. Undoubtedly, we make mistakes and feel our different lived experiences rub up against one another. Yet, it's such a gift to be sure in the knowledge that both of us are committed to tending our interconnected sores or bruises as gently as possible. To know we can grow together, that we can learn how to tend to ourselves by honouring the connections
beyond ourselves, also see starry nights. This is such an integral part of the power of the homes we're building. Our homemaking practice is about being loved for who we are, who we've been, and the endless possibilities of who we might be. It's us sitting in the knottedness of our embodied geographies with the care and love that we deserve. Throughout this project, both of us speak to how this process of homemaking has included searching and stretching ourselves to see the most gentle versions of ourselves and reach for the same in someone you love. As we build, we welcome ourselves home. Okay. So you'll have the chance to go and see the installations that are in place at the moment. There are 3 at the moment. There's a video in the Almshouse Chapel called All the Women in Me Are Tired. And it really looks at how do you thrive in this world as a black woman or someone who is socialised as being a black girl when there's so much anti-black violence, there's so much burden that we're often expected to carry. There's Starry Nights, which is a space to just completely have a completely opposite experience to that. So to all those burdens, to just sit back and observe the stars and dream and think about what are the ways that you can feel comfortable in the open space. And then there's a quilt that was made by the women's group of an organisation called the South London Refugee Association. And this quilt was made during the first lockdown, where instead of the women being able to come together in their weekly group, everyone was at home. Some people with really poor internet connections and so not able to connect in the ways that they had before. And they decided to make this quilt as something that they could do apart together. And so everyone made their own individual patches, and it was sewn together, become this gigantic thing that's so demonstrative of each woman's individuality, but also the really special bond that they have and the support that they have for each other in the group. Also, during the months that How We Build Home is at the museum, we'll be having different workshops and events. There'll be creative things, some skill sharing, and hopefully some experience sharing as well. Those are still in development, so watch this space. We'll have things up on the websites, I think on the museum website and on the Gem Collective website as well. So I want to end on 2 things. First is a poem that I wrote for Aziza, which was of love that we developed together and the home that we built with each other. How we build home for Aziza. We started by finding each other, not by chance so much as present day written in past stars that shine on into unfathomable futures. And the finding would have been as nothing without the recognition of its worth. Fate did its part and then kept it moving. Testament to good taste and keen sight that it trusted our sense, that we trusted our senses, made the leap in faith that we would fall with grace, that any falling out would only lead to a deeper falling in, that falling was all we ever had to do to land at new depths together. And each leap, each landing, every deep dive and delve created a trail that led us homeward. Building by traversing, creating a constellation that lit every possible path onward. And so we evolve over and over. Our revolutions imperfect, never ending. Our revelations ecstatic, open endings. Love and action as done, doing, and still to do. So much still to do. In this spill from our bottle of time, a whole universe and more pouring forth, and still, the home we build reaches beyond it, cannot be limited to length or latitude, exists past horizons, approaches infinity and extends still. We didn't build new worlds, we grew into new selves, didn't discard past hurts but trusted our tending, nurtured new strengths from old foundations, existed as enough, engaged ease as endpoint, created holding, held out content as tethering, saw each other back from the brink of disappearing. All we had to do to build home was be, all we've always been and ever will be. Together we are home. And to close, I want to share a post that Azizat wrote that I think encompasses so much of what we're doing with how we build home, and that was the basis of one of the installations, Starry Nights. The post demonstrates the degrees of relationship and home building we've been considering within GEM, and which Azizat reflected on so deeply. Building home with one another and as a collective, but also with and within ourselves, even and perhaps especially when that felt impossible. Starry Nights, the evolution of our tent. We were tired of waiting for justice or care, tired of having to face interconnected brutalities alone. For me, and I think for all of us, GEM was about creating a home where we could speak from our bodies and tend to the wounds that we were told to forget or minimize. We started by trying to pitch our own tent, build our own home that we could take comfort in and be protected within, at least a little. But we were trying to build and carry another structure while everyone has also been trying to survive multiple apocalypses. We began to notice a familiar pattern. GEM kept getting bottlenecked around a few people who were then trying to hold everyone together to smooth over any cracks and build the foundation for a collective context. And this is heavy, knotted work. There are so many different pains, spikes, and heartaches that can and did rub up against one another. Since we hadn't learned how to move as a collective, we fell back into the carelessness that informs the world we live in. We began reproducing another tent or home structure that allows for gendered and racialized labour to remain in place and unchecked. And Audre Lorde already told us, the master's tools could never dismantle the master's house. We cannot keep asking ourselves to do more, push for more, even as we're feeling our bodies breaking under the pressure of racial capitalism. So then Mwasi asked, what if we let go of the tent to make sure that no one has to hold up more than they can bear? At first, this idea terrified me. It requires us to believe in the possibility of us resting within our wider world. Yet, at the same time, we're painfully aware of the breathtaking cruelty that this world can show to those of us positioned as acceptable collateral damage. And for me personally, given how fragile my health has felt lately, it still hasn't felt safe to see anyone other than my immediate family. Honestly, I'm still reeling from witnessing so many people default to state-sanctioned carelessness over any kind of collective responsibility during multiple crises. It felt and feels near impossible to imagine comfort and ease outside in the open, with no walls to try and shield us from the brutalities that we've had to face for too long. But as we began learning how to speak and feel into our embodied truths, another way of being started to seem possible. What happens when we let go of the comfort found in structures that have already been tried and failed? Instead of building more borders, what would it mean to create conditions for all of us, within and beyond the collective, to be able to rest out in the open, underneath the stars? How might we tend to ourselves and each other in the midst of all of this horror? And as we committed ourselves to figuring out how to take up space on our own embodied terms, we realized that resting out in the open gave us the opportunity to see the beauty of the stars, skies, and earth that surrounded us. That's when Saima remembered the words of a yoga instructor at the end of a session. Students were encouraged to lie down and feel the earth rise to cradle them. So we expanded from there and began to think about how we also might feel the earth rise to cradle and tend to us. There's so much in the earth in terms of life, but also all of the different layers that cannot be seen or fully known. The earth holds the inequities of our current reality, including the many who have died quicker under the brutal functioning of racial capitalism. For me, I know that I'm living under a constant fear of soon disappearing into the underside of the earth. But I can't keep running on that fear. While I'm here, I choose to tend to my presence by speaking and feeling through the inequities and histories that we're all so intimately connected to. Christina Sharp was once writing about how the black people who were thrown off boats or jumped during the transatlantic slave trade, their bodies would have never made it to the bottom of the ocean. They would have become a part of the life cycles of the different organisms in the water, as well as becoming of the water. And water moves, right? So for me, it's been vital to think about how in our rivers, showers, everything, these histories are still with us, washing over us. And I want to learn how to move with these waters as well. We're not static beings, bordered into any one corner of the world. In letting go of our one solitary tent house structure, we're looking out and tending to the connections that we have to all that flows around us and through us. This is the expansiveness of our collective dreams. So that's what I'm dreaming and working towards now. How can we imagine the earth tending to us while we also tend to the earth, while also insisting on our right to rest? Who knows where this will go? But I feel ready for this, for us. Thank you. I don't know if anyone had any quick questions or comments. Comments welcome. I'm not sure if the live stream is there or not. It's still there. Cool. So if anyone has anything they'd like to put in the chat. Otherwise, now will be a chance to go and visit the installations. Take your time with them. We've got until 8. Yeah. So the video in the chapel, it runs like 5.5 minutes, and it's on a loop. And then the other side, there's the Starry Nights and the Women's Quilt. Thank you all so much again. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. And we really look forward to sharing more of how we build home with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
For those on the live stream, if you can still hear me, we're going to put on a video now that shows the different installations, so you'll have a chance to have a look at part of the video, All the Women in Me Are Tired, and also the other installations. And what we'll also do is share links for viewing the full video, and obviously come visit the museum so you can see the installations in person if it's possible. Thank you all so much.
Working with the Museum of the Home, Jeffrey Must Fall. It is essential that we contextualise how we build home in relation to the public conversation around Robert Jeffrey, and what it means when we're building home in these spaces that were built through the brutalisation of Black people. The ongoing legacy of colonialism and white supremacy are mapped onto our different experiences of being, and yet, with the acknowledgement of all of this, we still choose to turn home. Aziza Johnson, 2020. Quarantine Quilt, South London Refugee Association Women's Group, 2020 to 2021. Conceived and created by the group as a project that members could work on collaboratively, despite physical separation. Conveying the individuality of each member, the pieces are both visually and thematically diverse. They speak of the women's frustration with the UK's hostile environment policy and experiences of racism, of living through a global pandemic, and challenges of motherhood in inadequate temporary accommodations, but also of community, hope, resistance, change, and a collective struggle for justice. View the full video at tinyurl.com/gem all the women.